Hello, and welcome to a follow-up of my previous tier list. In that one, we ranked the Resident Evil games based off of how likely I'd survive them. This time, we're going to be ranking the DLCs of a lot of those games based off how likely we'd survive them. And as a note, this video was entirely inspired by a comment. I wouldn't have even thought about doing the DLCs at all if it wasn't for Bulldog PC's comment. So thank you so much, Bulldog, for the suggestion. This video is for you, bud. Once again, like last time, I will be having the same 5 stipulations. If you didn't watch the previous video, then those stipulations are that I will have all the gear going into it they do, as well as any special abilities those characters would have, because in most games those special abilities are tied to how you progress through the story, so it wouldn't make an interesting It wouldn't be an interesting conversation if I didn't have the ability to do the puzzles because of missing something fundamental. So that's why I have that rule there. But that does not mean that I will have their training or their backstory or anything like that. The second stipulation is I have no outsider knowledge of the characters, the puzzles, the enemies, the plot, anything like that. So I have to figure things out as if I could figure them out if I was in that situation. Number 3 is in games where enemies drop supplies, items on death, then they will also do so for me, because those games, or in this case those DLCs, are balanced around more enemies, but those enemies give you resources, so it would be basically impossible without that stipulation. Fourth stipulation being that the healing items will work on me the same way they work on the characters in the story. So if I get stabbed or hit with an attack that doesn't kill me, and I use a herb or a first aid spray, it will rejuvenate that wound for me. And fifth, I will be immune to the virus, or at the bare minimum, immune to contamination due to attacks from the enemies, like most of the characters you play as seem to be. Because in some instances, there are even cutscenes where the characters you're playing get hit by attacks that could otherwise infect them, and they obviously don't get infected. So, with all that out of the way, let's get on to the list. So, we're doing this a little bit out of order first. The first one I want to talk about is the Shadows of Rose DLC. Reason being, I hadn't actually played it before, so before I started recording this, I went and I played through the entire game, and there should even be a couple episodes up of that series already. I decided to record my playthrough of Shadows of Rose, and this is going to be one of those really funny things where I actually died a good amount in that DLC, but the entire reason is because of the contrivedness of some of the gameplay mechanics at times. So I'm actually going to put this one in either probably survive or call me John Resident. We'll start here for now. One of the things that was immediately noticeable for me when I was playing that, aside from it being in third person, was just how slow you run as Rose. 90% of whenever I would get hit by any attack, or when there was anything that had a chance to hurt me, was because you move at 1 mile an hour the entire game, even when sprinting. Rose is unbelievably slow. And I don't know why they made it that way. I'm assuming because otherwise it would have been a really, really easy DLC. But, being outrun by enemies that are literally shambling towards you just felt so miserable at times. Especially because there's not any dodging mechanics to avoid their attacks, at least for the first chunk. You do eventually get your superpowers, which let you repel them using a charge if they grab you. But put some spring in your step, lady. I move faster on crutches than Rose was moving in that game. So honestly, that was a huge factor. Another one was there's just some plot contrivances that made things go to more dangerous sections, but that realistically wouldn't have happened. Especially that part where you're getting the third mask, and you somehow get snuck up on by this giant, slow, loud enemy that just sneaks up on you somehow and knocks you out, and then you go to another section of the DLC. That would not happen. That would just speed up the process of the masks getting put in the statues and getting the next section started. One thing I will also mention, too, as per the stipulations, I would have her Megamycete superpowers. So that would also, again, make a lot of the scenarios a bit easier. And I wouldn't be as averse to using them as she is, because the whole plot of it is that she's trying to get rid of her Mega Myceate powers because they've made her life more difficult to, like, fit along with friends, and, like, so she's basically been a social outcast. So she wants them gone. I wouldn't have that same stipulation, though, because even if I was, 16, I was already a social outcast for a while in high school. So if I'm pretty confident if I had superpowers, I wouldn't really be trying to get rid of them to try to fit in, because I didn't fit in anyways. So I would probably have used her powers more and been a little bit more fluent with them. But even with just like the baseline that she has, I would still be pretty confident in my ability to survive and use her powers properly. And honestly, I think I would use them better in that there are these plants you have to use your power to hit, right? And sometimes when you are using your power on it, there'll be these black puddles, which if you stand on them for like 8 seconds, you'll die. But when this millisecond she steps in those little puddles that are like ankle high, she starts stumbling and flailing around, and you immediately stop using your powers. I would not start stumbling like an idiot when that happens. So some of the puzzles and like areas you gotta figure things out and like go around where more enemies are because she doesn't want to step in the puddle and then use her power to get rid of the plant, and then like that would get rid of the puddle. So all in all, I think I would be much better off than Rose was in that situation. Admittedly, she does have firearms training, but so do I, so we'd be on a similar extent there. Even the part where you're playing hide-and-go-seek with the dolls and without your weapons and your gear and stuff like that, in that section I think I would also do very well, because like I've established before, I was very, very good at hide-and-seek. Like, we're talking, I literally had a time where we were playing hide-and-go-seek, and my friends couldn't find me, and after like an hour, they just went and did stuff and didn't bother to try to find me to tell me. So I was just sitting in a hiding spot for like 3 hours while they went and played video games inside. So, and my dumb ass was just like giddy, like, hee hee, they still can't find me. Didn't realize that they just completely forgot about me. So I was very good at hide and seek. So now that I think about it, that would have probably been the most dangerous section, was the dolls. But I don't think that would have been an issue for me either. So yeah, we're gonna put it in Call Me John Resident. The boss fight with Mother Miranda sounds like it would be dangerous, because in the base game she's pretty tough. But in this game she's a lot slower, and she has way less attack variety. And you also have your superpowers that can avoid her attacks. Like, you can block and absorb her projectiles. And then also, you get this superpower where you punch the ground and this twig comes out and impales her and, like, knocks her down. So, honestly, her boss fight is way easier as Rose than it is in the base game as Ethan. So, we're gonna put that in Call Me John Resident. Next up, we have Separate Ways. Now, I know what you might be thinking. It doesn't make sense to put the original Separate Ways in here because it wasn't a DLC, it came with the game. But you would actually be wrong, in a sense. I'm including it because the original version of Resident Evil 4 released on the GameCube, and it did not have Separate Ways or those side story DLCs at all. They actually added that 9 months later to the PS2 release, so it was actually added to other versions going forward, but it was not part of the base game. So I'm still going to consider it a DLC of sorts, in that the original version of the game, you wouldn't have Separate Ways. So that's why I'm doing it this way. Also, it gives me more to talk about, so why not? So just like when we were talking about the original versus the remake is a bit more deadly than the original, just because it's a faster-paced game. But at the end of the day, I think we're just kind of cooked in both of these. So they're just as dangerous as the main campaigns are. Admittedly, they're shorter, but that doesn't make them less dangerous necessarily, as far as the ratio of danger to gameplay goes. So I'm gonna put Separate Ways remake above hers, because the original, because I think her original story has some sections I could survive, like, not too bad. Like the first chapter of the original Separate Ways is just basically fighting Ganados, which as I established before, it wouldn't be super unlikely I survive. But beyond that, everything in that is pretty scuffed. You got the laser sections in both games where you gotta do like acrobatics and whatnot to avoid it. In the remake, you also have the added fact that there's that giant monster that's chasing you during that section. You've got the enemies with guns that are everywhere in both versions of the game. You've got Krauser in the original, which is unique to Separate Ways' original story. And honestly, kind of dumb that Leon doesn't actually finish him off, and then he shows up again, and Ada is the one that puts him down. Like, just give Leon the win there. Come on, game. But the Sadler boss fight is incredibly deadly in both games. It's definitely more dangerous in the remake because he can, like, he's much faster. He can shoot his tentacle through, like, solid walls and whatnot to hit you on the other side of pillars and stuff like that. Which isn't to undersell how dangerous he is in the original. He dashes around pretty quick, and he has, like, this palm thrust he does that's kind of like the Wesker attacks, you know, where he'll just, like, dash up to you and send you flying. And both versions can redirect bullets as well, so I don't think I ever beat the Sadler in either versions of the games. So that's already a pretty comfortable, like, hard stop there. But there's just a lot of dangers going on throughout both Separate Ways DLCs. Like, I wish I had more to talk about as far as, like, things going in my favor. But, I mean, Ada uses her grappling hook a lot, which is not something I would probably be very good at. I would probably try to use it in some sections and just die. So, you know, I don't know what to say, man. Like, I wish I had more interesting points I could bring up in my favor for these. But Ada, I mean, she's doing it by herself without backup. Like Leon has some backup in both games, be it Ada or Louis Sarah in some segments. She's just on her own. Even the fact that in the remake they put the It fight that was in the... There's even the fact that in the remake, they put the fight with It, as Leon refers to it in the original game. They put that in her DLC instead of the main story. And honestly, like, that whole enemy, the other hand of Salazar, that stalks you relentlessly, like, you get infected by them right at the start of the game and have, like, the mind-affecting hallucinations and fear, like, triggers and whatnot. And they're just mercilessly stalking you down throughout a lot of the DLC. Like, I don't think I even make it past that first scenario where I get injured by it and infected, and then I have to try to fight it with all the hallucinations and, like, the fog and all that stuff. So, yeah, I mean, it's boring, but we're cooked. Like, there's not much I can say to give me any sort of chance at survival in either of these. So, we're just cooked. Next up, we have Lost in Nightmares. Ooh, this is an interesting one. So you got that final boss fight with Wesker, but you're also not beating him. You're just trying to survive for a while. I think I'm gonna put it in the top. No, we're gonna put it in we're cooked. It's either we're cooked or high chance of death. We'll do high chance of death for now. I'll talk my way through it a bit and see if I think of anything. So you've got some puzzles to solve in that one, but you're not alone because I'd be playing as Chris, so I'd have Jill as my partner. You got those weird dudes that have those anchors that will, like, grab you, and if you don't get rescued by your partner, you'll die instantly after like 5 seconds. Those guys are pretty dangerous. Aside from those big enemies with the anchors and Wesker, there really isn't anything else enemy-wise. It's just those, like, slow, husky enemies that'll just grab you, but they can't actually hurt you. They just slow you down type of thing. So, actually, most of the danger is going to basically boil down to the Wesker boss fight. So, all things considered, yeah, it's got the really dangerous Wesker boss fight, and in theory, those anchor enemies are pretty dangerous, but they're pretty slow overall, so the main kill factor would be the Wesker boss fight, I think. So, yeah, I think overall, we're probably going to put this in coin toss then. Next up, we have Desperate Escape. This one is where you're playing as Jill or Josh, and you're basically trying to escape and get to the helicopter that you use at the end of the game to pick up Chris and Sheva when they are fighting Wesker in the final boss fight. And you basically fighting your way through a base with a bunch of enemies and trying to escape. So I haven't played this one in a while. So this DLC has a lot of enemies, and a lot of dangerous enemies at that. Again, I have a partner to shoulder some of the burden with me. And Josh is pretty badass. There is a lot more enemy variety in this DLC than in Lost in Nightmares. You basically have like your standard Maginis, you got your big brute Maginis, you got your chainsaw Maginis, your executioner Maginis, gun Maginis. I think there's even like some of those bugs in it too, like that are pretty dangerous. So overall, like there's a lot of dangerous stuff, and it's very high octane. You're running around and there's just always action happening. So with all that said, I think I'm gonna put it in coin toss as well. I think it's a bit more dangerous than Lost in Nightmares because there's just way more enemy variety, but it's honestly not that different from the base story. About the same. I would say Desperate Escape's a little bit easier overall than the Resident Evil 5 story, but not enough to change the tier at all. The enemies you fight in it are overall easier than the most difficult sections of the Resident Evil 5 base game, but it's balanced out by Josh being a little bit less badass than Sheva, but not by much. Next up, we have Resident Evil 7's DLCs, and with this, we have banned footage. So I'm gonna just be kind of ranking the DLC, those like side DLCs for Resident Evil 7 as a whole. So, and I mean, in the picture you'll see there's Ethan Must Die, but that's not really a side story. It's just like the equivalent of Mercenaries, so I'm not going to be counting that. As far as the banned footage goes, there's the one where you're playing as Zoe. I mean, that one is 100% survive rate because you don't die in it. Like, that's the whole point of it, is it's just showing how things happen. So you can't really die in that one. There's the game, the Twisted Game you're playing. That's the only one that I think I really have much chance that I would die in. The other one is like the Room with Marguerite, where you gotta solve some puzzles and put things back as they were when she comes back. Actually, I could see that one leading to death too. So with that in mind, we are going to put it in the survivor-sided. I think averaging out with the Zoe one being 100%, we got the Marguerite one being probably around 50%, to be honest, and then the game one being probably 75%. Averages out to like 75%, you know, so like top of survivor-sided, basically. So that's what we're gonna go with for that. And I wish I had more to talk about, but those are just really small side DLCs, so. The Not a Hero one. Let's put it here for now, and I'll talk out my thoughts. So, you're playing as Chris in that. You have, like, you know, decent gear. But one of the things that you have to consider with that is you're not playing as Ethan, so you're not as durable as Ethan is against the molded enemies. So they are a little bit more dangerous in that regards for me going into it, because I won't have the Ethan superpowers. I will just be a dude with guns and like knives and whatnot. There are a good amount of enemies in that one. There's also the fact that you have a squad of people that are put in precarious situations, and even though I wouldn't have like the connections to them as like their squad leader like Chris does, I would still, seeing people in situations like they're in, where I could maybe save them, I would go out of my way to try to save them. That does put Chris in a lot of dangerous situations. That would also put me in those situations. So, because I wouldn't just leave them there. Like, when there's a guy that's, like, strung up by the barbed wire behind a door, I would try to find the key to save him and break him free. And, you know, have all the bad stuff that happens as a response to that. There's also the final boss fight of it with... what's that little shit's name? Is it Lucas? Whatever the little fucker's name is from the family, the Baker family, which was all good except for Lucas. He does transform into a fairly dangerous boss fight at the end of it, so that would also be a pretty big factor in me not making it. I'm gonna leave it in high chance of death though, because we do have a lot of guns, and the molded still aren't as dangerous as the enemies in, like, separate ways. The other main thing that is a factor as well is, instead of Chris having Ethan's durability, he knows how to punch real fucking hard, and you can, like, when you're playing the campaign, you can just, like, headshot punch some of the molded and just defeat them in one blow. I would not be able to do that because I'm not as strong and I would not be as good at punching, so that would make it a little bit more difficult. Speaking of punching, this is our first no thoughts given, we're cooked. The Fate of Zoe, I believe it's called, where you play as, I think, her uncle or something, who goes to the Baker residence and sees the aftermath of it and tries to find and save Zoe. And you fight a bunch of molded, and you also fight a mutated and like almost tyrant-like Jack Baker, who's gone AWOL and ballistic type of thing. You do all of that with your bare fucking hands. You do, after a while, get this like gauntlet type thing that gives you like enhanced punches, but all you're doing is punching. I am not defeating molded with my bare hands in any universe, so we're just instantly cooked in that one. There's not really all that much to talk about, you know? I'll ramble a little bit so you can see some cool footage of like the combos you can pull off and like the killing and stuff like that, but like, I'm just cooked. No ifs, ands, or buts. I'm not saving Zoe, and I'm not defeating the molded. We're just doomed. Next up, we have the Struggle. So the Struggle is the DLC where you play as Moira Burton during the time in Revelations 2 where you get separated for like, I think a few months actually, from Claire, and you are on your own from her anyways, but you meet this old, I think he's like Russian dude, who teaches her a bunch of survival techniques, gets her to finally use guns again and all that stuff, and you just basically survive on the island with them. You don't really have it like the gimmicks to like stun enemies as easily, and also the old man isn't as badass as Claire is. Nothing against him, he's just not. Like, that's a very, very, very high bar for somebody to reach, and this random old man is just not going to be clearing that bar. But he's still pretty competent, and he teaches you survival things and helps you, and so he would make me a better survivor by the end of it if I make it out, type of thing. But he just isn't as cool or as powerful as Claire. But on the flip side, you don't really fight as many dangerous things here. I think it's around the 80% chance that I survive it. There's not as much super dangerous stuff happening in it. It's kind of just filling in the gaps, fighting lots of normal enemies and whatnot, and I don't think there's even a boss fight. It's been a while, let me confirm that. Yeah, so there aren't any boss encounters in that game, though there are some of those big bloaty boys you fight, and like a good amount of revenants, which to be fair are fairly dangerous, but I don't think it's anything too crazy. So we're gonna put it in probably survive and leave it there. Little Miss, second entry in Call Me John Resident. I mean, they're both equally, like, I'm surviving them. So, this one is basically just you're playing lots of games of hide and seek and running around maps avoiding being detected. And as I've already established, I was very good at hide and seek. So, that's the entirety of the DLC is you're playing hide and seek and basically, I mean, there's a story behind it where you're fighting for control over, like, Natalia's body, basically, between the original Natalia and then Alex Wesker, I believe, trying to take over her body type of thing. So there's a story behind it, but the gameplay is just hide and seek, so like I'm not dying in that. Last up, we have the Operation Raccoon City Echo 6 DLC. So what Echo 6 is it's some side stories, like some extra chapters, where you play as a different squad of 4 people. Good guy squad. In the OG, you're playing as, like, bad guys that are kind of covering things up and whatnot on Raccoon's side. One of the endings you can get involves you, like, killing, like, Leon and Claire, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, in Raccoon City. Because you can kind of choose a bit of, like, what you do, and that's one of the endings. Whereas in this one, you're doing the opposite. So you come across Jill, and this is not really canon, so that I don't know if that's going to be really much of a factor, but it's not canon. But like, you do come across Jill when she's fighting Nemesis a bit in the streets, and you help her out there. And you do have a 1v4 with Nemesis a little bit later after that. But fight is a really loose term there, because you're up on a building, basically. He's down on the ground by a gas station, and you're just kind of shooting at him, and then zombies start to climb up the stairs, so you just have a couple people clear out the zombies whilst you keep shooting Nemesis. And then eventually you kind of like go down and get him to like fall over near one of the gas cans at the gas station and then like blow it up, and then he just falls over, and that's it. So it's not really a fight. So even though Nemesis is normally really dangerous, in this game he's kind of pathetic. Like, he's very slow and doesn't really do much, and when you do fight him, it's not even really a fight. And when you're helping Jill with it, he's mostly going after her and, like, shooting his tentacle at her and stuff. So, like, you're, like, trying to deal damage to break his tentacle and stuff. So, again, he's just not really that big of a deal in that. You do also fight, like, a bunch of tyrants that you see, like, the same variant tyrants you see in Resident Evil 2. But in this game, they are just so pathetic. Like, they're really slow. The only attack they have that might have a chance of hitting is this jumping punch, but it's, again, really slow, really telegraphed, and just, like, it's not gonna hit ever, basically. Not only that, but they're clearly giga nerfed, which makes sense because you fight multiple of them, but they're super nerfed. So to show just how sad the tyrants you face are, I'm gonna play a clip of a cutscene where there's these little spider enemies. They're just kind of little shits. They don't really do that much damage. They just kind of slash at your feet and stuff like that. And they can swarm you for sure, but like they're very dangerous. You can just kill them with a knife like really easily, and you can do like a knife strike and kill multiple of them at once. But there is one of the tyrants. The same tyrant variant that you see in Resident Evil 2 gets swarmed by like 4 or 5 of those small weak spiders, and gets folded by them and collapses and like dies, and then gets mutated by the spiders into a new form of tyrants. Like, it's so sad, like, to see just how far the mighty have fallen. You do also have hunters in that, but the hunters in that are super slow and flimsy. Again, I think it's just because of the era the game takes place. It was sort of in between the fast-paced Resident Evil like 6s and like and whatnot, like where like the enemies are really quick, and like the Resident Evil remakes. It was before those, but it was still after like the Resident Evil 4 and 5 and stuff like that. So the enemies weren't like super speedy because you're normally aiming in place, whereas not when you can like move and shoot. So most of the enemies are kind of in this weird middle ground where they're really slow, but they're a little bit faster than in Resident Evil 4 and 5, but it just makes them not very dangerous, to be honest, in a lot of situations. Again, much like before as well, I'm part of a team of 4 people, so the amount of work I have to put in is substantially less. Like, for example, in that section where there's Nemesis and the zombies are like going up the stairs, like, me and one other dude can cover the stairs pretty comfortably. And even if I'm not as badass as the other dude, like, no shot I'll be as badass as them, but I've got a gun, and I can help him clear out the zombies that are climbing up, and like, we can basically just coordinate, like, he shoots and then he reloads, and then while he's reloading and I shoot, type of thing. So like, I don't have to carry as much weight, which is another big factor. There's also that you do have support from your HQ that like does drop in like supplies occasionally and whatnot, but we're gonna put it in probably survive. It's probably around like 85% is what I would put it at, because the main thing that could get me killed is that there are enough of like those tyrant type enemies that there's a possibility that something could go wrong, and we could fall apart from that. But otherwise, I mean, some of the zombies are fairly fast, like the reddish ones that are kind of like mini Crimson Heads. They're kind of fast too. And these characters are explicitly not immune to infection, because there is that mechanic of if they bite you, you have to like get the blue herbs or the vaccine or whatever, otherwise you will turn into a zombie and die. So that is also a factor. Like, in this specific game, I will not be immune to infection because the characters are provably not immune to it. But otherwise, there's nothing too bad. Even the hunters in it are just kind of slow and flimsy and don't have all that much like health. Like, they're not as dangerous as they are in the other games. This is obviously a bit shorter of a list, so I don't really need to go back and think about too much. I think these are all in pretty comfortable spots. So there you have it. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you have suggestions for future tier lists. I have some I'm working on already as well, so I'm not out of ideas or anything. But if you guys have ideas, then I want to try and, you know, do some of the ideas you guys have too. Because I've been doing YouTube for a bit here, and that last video of the tier list was like the most engagement I've ever gotten. It's not even close. So I really want to kind of keep that energy going forward and have it be like a mutual collaboration type of thing. I also really want to harken back. Thanks so much for all the support that the last video got. It took me like about 14 hours to edit the tier list of the Resident Evil games. And in my mind, that if I just got like 50 to 100 views, I would keep doing it, because that would be about, you know, 14 times what I average on my normal videos, you know, so around like 50 to 100. Like if I can get that, then that's enough justification for me to keep doing this type of video. I never in a million years would have thought that it would get like thousands of views. So I am absolutely blown away and humbled by that. So thank you guys so much for that support. That was really insane. I still can't fully believe it. And the numbers are still going up too. You guys are awesome. So yeah, that's kind of enough of the rambly bits for me. The last thing I wanted to mention, and another comment on that video talked about me playing Dead Aim, and I tried for like 4 or 5 hours to get it set up and troubleshooting, but the emulator I was getting just wasn't working. I had to download 4 different versions of PCSX2 before it would finally like work, but then the controls just aren't working properly, so I can't aim my gun when I'm trying to do it. So I tried really hard to get Dead Aim to work. Like I said, I spent like 4 hours trying to get it set up, because I haven't played it, and I thought it'd be really fun, and then to be able to retroactively rank it, you know, at the end of the series and be like, yeah, I'd probably put it like in the leaning towards die or something like that. I thought that'd be really fun, and I really wanted to get a series for you. One of you guys suggested, but I failed. I'm sorry. I couldn't get it set up. I'm a failure. So I'm sorry to KhalidQ8425. I'm not sure if I pronounced that right, but I'm sorry. I really wanted to get that set up and play on the channel. It just wasn't feasible though. If they ever release it on Steam, or there's ever like a better port or a way to access and play it, I would be more than happy to play that though for the channel. But unfortunately, I just couldn't get it set up. I'm sorry. But otherwise, that's the list. That's the video. Enough rambling and enough of me being all mushy for you guys. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed. Share your own thoughts, and otherwise, stay healthy.